Hello there! Welcome back to Void Dwarf Studios. Today we will be returning to the 40k universe where I shall be telling its story from beginning to current times. Now before I start, I just need to say that this will not be an in-depth storyline of every event that's happened in the 40k universe, as it will get very convoluted very quickly, and I want to give each event its own particular video just so I can dive into it and talk more about it in more detail. This is going to be an overview of the galactic events in the 40k universe. As I've mentioned all the different players in a previous video, this will hopefully give context so that you will know what we're talking about. Even so, this could be a long one, folks, so maybe even a couple episodes, who knows. So grab yourself a cup of tea, or possibly some whiskey, depending on how much you enjoy this, and let's begin. Thousands of years before mankind even began to crawl out of the ocean, the galaxy was ruled by a race of beings known only as the Old Ones. These creatures had such psychic powers that they could both destroy and create entire races and planets, with nothing but the strength of their will and their minds. They did not create all the races that exist in the galaxy, but they are known to be directly responsible for the creation of the Eldar and the brutal Kroks, or as they became later known, the Orcs. During this time of conquest and expansion for the Eldar, they came into contact with a race called the Necrontyr, a radiated and short-lived alien species that grew jealous and resentful of the Eldar's technology and long lives. It was this hatred that caused the Necrontyr to join forces with powerful beings known as Catan, or star gods. The Necrons were tricked by the Catan and transformed into mechanical killing machines, now the Necrons. They became soulless, with little to no emotion of their own, and completely under control for the Catan. Together with them, they waged war against the Old Ones and their creations, in a conflict that will go down in history as the War in the Heavens, a war that lasted for thousands of years. The end of the war finally came when the Necrons turned on their masters. Enraged with the Catan for the bodies that they had been given, they managed to turn on them, imprison them, and shatter the Catan into shards. No longer would the Catan have the same power as the Old Ones, but with this betrayal, it meant that they could no longer stand up to the combined might of the Old Ones, Eldar and Orcs. And so they fled, hiding in vast tomb complexes on planets, and deciding to wait until the galaxy was right for them to rise once again. Now is probably a good time to mention that due to the chaos of the war in heaven, the death, the violence, the disease, the plagues, the magic or warp powers that were being thrown around all over the place, it is around this time that the chaos entities known as Khorne, Tzeentch and Nurgle were most likely created, as this was when these powers were on the rise, giving form to these new gods. Where is the fourth god Slaanesh? Oh, don't worry, we'll get to that one later. Now, after this great conflict, the galaxy was about a million years old at this point, give or take a few thousand years. It's a little tricky to work out. At this point in time, things seemed pretty damn good for the Eldar. Sure, the Old Ones were mostly missing or dead, but they were now the dominant race in the galaxy, without the Old Ones telling them what to do. The Orcs were a minor annoyance, as their primitive technology and barbaric nature stopped them from becoming any serious threat to the Eldar. And the Eldar now had complete control over the warp. They could travel through the galaxy as quickly as they wished. And so, the Eldar race entered a long period of peace. Humanity? Oh, you're asking what we're doing during all this? Well, we were just starting to make flimsy rockets that were heading into space. The Eldar were not particularly concerned with us at this point. Heck, their word for human was Monke, meaning monkey in their language. They were not particularly bothered. They were, on the whole, the Eldar are quite an arrogant race. So they decided to celebrate, indulge themselves, expand their horizons, take up some new hobbies. It all started innocently enough, but then these hobbies got a bit darker. The Eldar craved sensation. They wanted thrills. They wanted to experience the galaxy. More pleasure. More anything, everything. The Eldar could feel and taste and experience things far more acutely than humans ever can. But these desires and emotions coalesced in the warp, giving life to an entity now known as Slaanesh, the god of excess. Because in Warhammer 40k, if enough people want or believe the same thing, it can become real, and it will try to eat you most of the time. The birth of Slaanesh in the warp created a shockwave in reality so great that it tore a hole into real space, sucking in the majority of the Eldar's homeworlds, devouring the population's souls, and creating what is now known as the Eye of Terror, a gateway into what you could describe as hell. The Eldar gods that attempted to challenge Slaanesh were eaten, shattered, or fled. Only those Eldar who were far enough away from the explosion, or hidden in the webway, were saved from this catastrophe. And that is how the Eldar today are split into their two factions, of both the Eldari and the Drukhari. The Eldar choosing to turn away from the pursuit of pleasure, and the Drukhari not giving a monkeys. Now we enter into the age where humanity takes to the galactic stage, in a time that became known as the Great Crusade. It is the year 30 million. Terra was united by an enigmatic figure known only as the Emperor of Mankind, the most powerful human who has ever lived. Now, the Emperor. I'm not going to go into too much detail on his origins, or how he conquered Terra, as this is quite a big story by itself. So let's just try and stay focused on the galaxy. I promise I'll get into the Emperor at some point soon. Once Terra was secure, he began to look to the stars to reunite humanity. As by this point, humanity had begun to explore the stars, but the warp storms and various troubles caused by the wars in heaven prevented travel through space, or at least made it incredibly dangerous, and contact was lost between most of Earth's colonies. But the Emperor knew in order to conquer the galaxy he was going to need generals as capable as himself, and so, using warp power, science, technology, he began an experiment that became known as the Primarch Project. 20 sons, created from his genetic material, made to be as capable and as powerful as he was, both in mind, body, and spirit. But the Chaos Gods were aware of the Emperor's plans, and wished to destroy them, for they foresaw that these Primarchs and the Emperor were capable of potentially ending their lives. Casting the Emperor's sons across the galaxy using their warp powers, they flung them to different planets, where they grew up amongst mankind, learning both mankind's greatest strengths and its greatest flaws, shaping them into the beings they became. But almost unanimously they became leaders of men. However, though the Primarchs were missing, the Emperor still had their genetic material, and with it he created their sons, the Legioni Astartes, what we now know as Space Marines. Superior humans, physically, mentally, and spiritually, they were the frontline troops in his galactic crusade to reconquer the galaxy. And in time, he united them with their Primarchs. It seemed at one point that nothing could stop the Emperor or humanity from conquering the galaxy. The Eldar were barely powerful enough to defend themselves from everything in the galaxy had to offer. And the Necrontyr were mostly asleep in their tomb worlds. The Orcs were, again, mostly just an annoyance, and were shattered by the Emperor, and his Primarchs with their legions were virtually unstoppable. if it were not for a fateful decision. The Emperor, learning of the Eldar's webway technology, the ability to travel through the warp without going through the warp, essentially making a safe tunnel through the warp where demons could not attack them, wanted to replicate this technology for mankind because it would mean a safer way to travel across the Imperium. So he left the crusade to his most trusted son, Horus, Primarch of the Lunar Wolves, who were later renamed the Sons of Horus, in honour of his new position. Now the War Master, on his shoulders were placed the conquest of the galaxy in his father's name. Horus, at first, did fine, but the weight of responsibility even for a Primarch was huge, and doubt gnawed his mind. This doubt became the key for an event that almost brought humanity to its knees, where Horus chose to side with Chaos Gods along with several of his brothers and began what was now known as the Horus Heresy, the climactic finale of which was a duel between the Emperor and Horus aboard his flagship Above Terra, in which Horus is destroyed both mind, body and soul, but the Emperor was mortally wounded in the fight, forcing him to be connected to what is called the Golden Throne, a life support machine that keeps him from dying, and just so happens to also prevent demons from destroying the planet, but I'll get into that in more detail in another video. His remaining loyal sons and their legions drove the traitors back towards the Eye of Terror, where they fled. And to this day, Chaos Space Marines come out from the Eye of Terror, or from many hiding places across the galaxy, to wreak havoc on the Imperium, in their eyes to seek vengeance on the Emperor and his sons. But the age of progress for humanity was over. The age of the Imperium had begun. The Primarch of the 13th Legion, Rabute Guilliman of the Ultramarines, decided it was necessary to break up the legions into chapters, severely limiting the power of the Space Marines to prevent this catastrophe from happening again. Though initially resisted by several of his surviving brothers, it was eventually accepted, along with his book, the Codex Astartes, a tactical doctrine on how an Astartes chapter should conduct itself. Some chapters followed it, some don't, or they choose to skirt around the edges of it. I'm looking at you, Space Wolves and Black Templars, you naughty boys. Who am I kidding? You're some of my favourite boys. In time, even the Primarchs disappeared, or were mortally wounded. Guilliman succumbing to a stab from a poisoned blade from his brother Fulgrim in a battle between the Ultramarines and the Emperor's children, forcing him to enter a stasis field before he died. For the next 2,000 years, the Imperium is rocked by catastrophe, civil war, and attacks both from Xenos and Chaos forces. Horus's first captain, Abaddon the Despoiler, led Black Crusades into the Imperium, each one causing incredible devastation. In his 13th Black Crusade, he destroys a key planet called Cadia that protected the Imperium from Chaos forces coming out of the Eye of Terror. However, even now, all hope was not lost. The Eldar Ynnari, led by Yvraine, and several Imperial forces temporarily made a truce, and were able to revive the Ultramarine Primarch Guilliman from death, with a combination of the power of the Ynnari god of death and the Mechanicum technology, removing the poison from Guilliman and bringing him back to life. With him leading the Indomitus Crusade with his new Primaris Marines, a secret project he began before his defeat by Fulgrim, he has begun the fight to take back the galaxy for humanity. It is far from certain who will win, as the traitor Primarchs have only become more powerful and the Chaos Gods are still on the rise, and it is a galaxy full of danger and uncertainty. But maybe, with a little bit of luck, the Imperium might survive. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for updates from GW releases, as I will continue to update the story as it comes out. The most up-to-date story right now is called The Psychic Awakening. See, I've dated my video now. Where, due to the warp tearing greater into the real space, people with psychic abilities have either grown more powerful or the number of psychers have increased, making all kinds of problems for the Imperium, as uncontrolled psychers can cause an incredible amount of damage, to say the least. On top of that, many characters are being upgraded, either because they were mortally wounded or through choice, into Primaris Marines. I'm actually impressed I was able to keep this under half an hour, but yeah, this has been a summary of the 40k universe timeline. Hopefully this gives you a good understanding of the general story and how all the characters are involved. If you're particularly interested in certain events such as the War of Apostasy or the Horus Heresy, or even the more recent releases such as the Dark Imperium or the Indomitus Crusade, please feel free to ask, and I will put up videos when and if I can. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It genuinely does help. And if you're feeling particularly generous, please have a look at the Patreon page. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Take care.